My name is Eric Peterson, and this is the Digital Scholar webinar, which is hosted by the Southern California Clinical and Translational Science Institute here at the University of Southern California and Children's Hospital, LA. I'm the co-director of digital recruitment and scholarship here in the CTSI, and I'm also an associate professor of psychiatry and behavioral sciences here at USC. So the presenter today is going to take questions at the end, but please feel free to type them in as they come up for you. So you can click on the Q&A tab. There's also a tab just called chat that you could click on as well. So I'll help facilitate the Q&A at the end of the presentation. So you could type it either into the Q&A or the chat, whatever's easiest for you. She's also going to have a few questions for the audience as well. So please type those into the chat. So we're really excited. Our presenter today is Dr. Sara Grummert. She's going to be talking about Dedoose, which she uses for qualitative and mixed methods research, and is really going to give us an overview, talk about getting started with the program. So I'm just going to give a very brief overview and then turn it over to Dr. Grummert. Dr. Grummert, she's the Director of Academic Engagement at Dedoose, and she also holds a dual appointment at the Institute for Mixed Methods Research. In her role with Dedoose, she leads strategy around how Dedoose engages and supports the larger academic and research community, and with a focus on curating learning resources, conducting methods consultations, and training social scientists in how Dedoose can support more nuanced analyses, which is one of the things she's going to be doing today. She earned her doctorate at the University of California at Riverside in the field of higher education administration and policy. And her areas of expertise are in qualitative research design, qualitative data analyses, and advancing the use of visual methods. So we're really excited to have Dr. Grummert here today, and I'm going to turn it over to her now.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for the really nice introduction. I'm not used to that, so now I'm going to have to put that on my writer moving forward. Is it afternoon for you? Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. As I pull up my slides, I'm going to have a short slide deck here, and then we're going to actually hop into Dedoose. If you could put into the chat what type of data you work with or have been working with in the past several years, that would really help me understand what type of methods you're using and what you might be interested in seeing in Dedoose. So just feel free to throw that in the chat. Some focus groups. Okay, great. Interview. Great. So we do have some qualitative folks here today. Good to know. Okay, so I'll go ahead and get started here. Again, my name is Sara. I'm with Dedoose and the Institute for Mixed Methods Research. If you like anything I have to say today and you feel like you want to meet up either for a consultation or perhaps collaborate on some research, I'll give you my direct email address so we can link up together. But today I'm really going to be focusing on introducing you to Dedoose. So I'm going to go over some basic features and benefits, just briefly on pricing, just a couple notes there, because they do have a free trial that you can try out today in case you do want to follow along in the second half of the webinar today. And I'm going to go over some terminology and some foundational elements of Dedoose before we actually go into the application and start working. I want to orient you to the whole application, the different workspaces, and then actually import some data, code that data, link some memos, and then maybe touch on some of the data visualization capabilities if we have time. And again, feel free to throw any questions in the Q&A. I'm only working on one monitor right now because I'm in the middle of a move. but I'll make sure to leave at least 10 to 15 minutes at the end to answer all of your questions. All right, so Dedoose is both a qualitative and mixed methods data analysis application. I like to include maybe the obvious of what it is, because you can have quantitative data in it as well. So you can simultaneously link any qualitative and quantitative data in your project. It was created by UCLA researchers, just a fun fact. A couple researchers got frustrated that there was not a tool on the market that was meeting their needs. And so they were wild enough to go out and build it themselves. It's cloud-based. So this means you can use Dedoose anywhere you have an internet connection on nearly any device. So you don't have to worry about it's not a traditional software package. I think that's the best way to put it. It's not, you purchase this software and it's downloaded on one computer. Now you can move from computer to computer anywhere you have an internet connection. You can log in and analyze your data. I like to mention this piece about data management because obviously you can do data analysis. That's why it was created, but you can also do some really cool things related to project management within those different studies that you're doing. And I'm happy to talk through some of those tips at the end of today, if you feel like you may use Dedoose. All right, and to go over some of these features and benefits that kind of differentiate us from other folks on the market, some of this will be redundant, but because of the cloud-based design, that means you can collaborate in real time. So you can think of it almost like a Google Doc, where you're actively collaborating on the same exact document in real time, rather than something like Dropbox, where you have to, work on it in isolation and then upload it and merge. There's none of that. You just add folks to the project and then you're collaborating in real time. Again, you can analyze both qualitative and mixed methods data in integrated ways. Don't have to worry about what type of operating system you're working with. We like to think the user interface is intuitive. If it's not, let me know, because I need to step up my training game or communicate with our team about how we can make it better. There's also multiple language options for that user interface. So you can customize it to English, Spanish, German, and Chinese, and I think they'll be expanding to more languages in the future. But just a side note, you can upload any language into Dedoose to analyze it. This would just be about customizing that user interface. And lastly, you get some hands-on training, consultation, and support, most likely with yours truly, but there are other folks associated with the Institute for Mixed Methods Research who can help you if you choose to use Dedoose and want some consultation or just feedback from other PhDs, other trained qualitative researchers about how you're using Dedoose. In terms of what type of data Dedoose can handle, I have yet to run into anyone who had a type of data that we couldn't get into the system. So obviously the standard, any document, so focus groups, interviews, those work very well. So do images, audio, video. I've been doing a huge video analysis project, over 200 hours, all in Dedoose. If you are thinking about doing video analysis, please reach out to me. I would love to talk to you about it, and I can give you some quick tips as well. Spreadsheets. So you can upload, for instance, if you are doing any sort of survey and you have both qualitative and quantitative data in that survey, you can keep it all in one spreadsheet, upload it to Dedoose, and it does some magic that I'll be talking to you about shortly. You can also import PDFs. You can create a blank document and copy and paste information directly into Dedoose. And you can also import other projects. So if you want to try Dedoose out and you're transitioning from a different software or program, you can do so. This also means you can get out of Dedoose. So if you try it, it's not for you, the engineers programmed it so you can get your data out and into another application. So they're firm believers that you shouldn't be trapped in one platform. All right, I want to talk about the survey import tool just briefly, and I'm going to be connecting you to a webinar that a colleague and I did about the survey import feature. It is so helpful for any of you thinking about doing any type of survey analysis. So like I said before, you can keep all of that data in one spreadsheet. When you upload it to Dedoose, it's going to automatically link that qualitative data and quantitative data together. So if you had, for instance, different participants answering, different Likert scale questions, some open-ended questions, maybe some scores, anything like that, you can have that all in one sheet and get it into Dedoose. Dedoose will also pre-code some of that qualitative data for you by what question it was. And again, the video I'm going to link you to will go in depth about how to prepare that spreadsheet and also what type of data visualizations you can use immediately after import, especially if you had a lot of quantitative or categorical data in there. All right, a couple notes on pricing. If you're a student, you get a student discount, $10.95 per active month. That active month means they're not going to charge you for the months that you don't use it. So if I upload some data, code it for a month, but then I don't log on for 6 months, I'm not being charged for those 6 months, but my data is still in there, so I can come back at any time. And then the standard rate is $14.95, and that's per active month as well. And then quickly, I just want to mention, they do have organizational subscriptions. So if you have a research team, or if you want to cover your whole college department, for instance, you can get hooked up with one of their premier packages. If you want USC to pay for it, this is what I would advocate for. Get me in touch with your provost. You can have your university pay for Dedoose so that your whole student, faculty, and staff body can use Dedoose if they'd like. If you're interested in that, I'm going to give you my direct email, but you can also just email support@dedoose.com. All right, let's get into the fun stuff. So I'm going to go over some terminology here so that when we go into Dedoose and I start using different terms and concepts, you'll be able to follow along a little bit better. So Dedoose is using basically these 4 different elements to create a web of connections in your data, or rather track the web of connections that you are making as you conduct your analysis. So first off, we have media. This quite simply refers to the qualitative data that you're uploading into Dedoose. So those focus groups, those transcripts, images, video, any qualitative responses from a survey, all of those are going to be categorized as media in your media workspace. Next, we have descriptors. So these refer to any quantitative or categorical data that's associated with those pieces of media. So if you have an interview and you're interested in linking some demographics to that specific participant, if you're interested in more categorical information like research sites, survey scores, if you want to track change over time, all of those could be categorized as descriptors that you link to your media files. Next, we have excerpts. This just refers to the smaller pieces or snippets of your data that you're flagging as significant to your research questions. So a quote or a passage from an interview, maybe a small clip from a video. And you would then attach codes to those excerpts. So codes, I don't think I have to tell the folks in the room today, but just as a refresher, these are the analytical concepts that you're coming up with to capture a specific theme or topic of interest in your study. I like to show this slide because it kind of illustrates this web of connections that we're going to be talking about. So everything is linked together on the back end to allow you to have some really helpful data analysis, visualizations, and charts to help you explore patterns, relationships, or just dig in to your project deeper. We also have memos. I believe memos are one of the most important and most underutilized aspect of Dedoose. So you can link memos to media, so to an interview, to a code, but also to an excerpt. So you can capture your real-time analysis as you're going through and coding your data. And then if for instance, you wanted to export all codes related to, trying to think of a recent study, surveillance, for instance, you could choose to have your memos be listed side by side, those excerpts. So it can really be kind of the bridge between your analysis and your writing. But you can also use these, to communicate with your team, write reflexive memos, anything of that nature. All right, now I'm going to pop out of here and go into Dedoose. And again, as I'm going through Dedoose, feel free to put any questions in that Q&A. I'm going to be throwing a lot of information at you. And sometimes it makes more sense once it's your own data, of course. So if you're having trouble following along today, know that that is completely normal. Alrighty, you should all be seeing Dedoose now. If I could get a thumbs up, or you can just let me know if you're not. That may work easier. Great, okay, thank you. So first off, I want to orient us to these different workspaces. When you first download Dedoose, you're probably going to land on a demo project that has data in it. That's intended just to show you what Dedoose is capable of. You can exit out of there and immediately create your own project, though, if you want to start with a clean project. To do so, you would go to this Projects tab on the upper right. Go ahead and click that, and then you're going to see an option to create a project on the bottom right. Click that button. You're going to be prompted to include a title, a project description, and then there is an extra layer of encryption that you can add to your project. Side note about this option, it is very advanced level of security. So if you lose that encryption password, you lose your whole project and all of that data, because we don't keep that on our end because it is the highest level. So most often people don't need that, but just know that it is available for you. I'm going to go ahead and hit cancel because I already created a project for us today. So this projects workspace will show you any projects you've created, but also any projects you've been invited to. So I'm going to go ahead and load up a project for today. All right, this home page is going to show you a preview of different workspaces that the application has. Often I recommend folks navigate to the specific workspace they want to be working in, instead of working from these mini windows, just because you get more features if you go to the actual workspace. But what's really helpful about this home screen is this macro project data on the upper left. So you're going to see the project name, how many people are invited to the project. So right now it's just me, how many pieces of media you have, descriptors, excerpts, codes, code applications, and so on. This top banner, we call these different workspaces. So we've already been in the projects one. I'm going to take us to codes. This is going to house your full code book. and give you a preview of a couple different charts related to codes. Your media workspace, this houses all of your qualitative data. So right now I have a couple fake transcripts uploaded and also some video data. Your excerpts workspace is going to be a huge database of every single excerpt you've created in your project, along with what's associated with those excerpts. So what codes are attached, who created it, and a bunch of different data that you can filter via these panels to the left. Your descriptors workspace, this is going to house all of your quantitative, categorical, or demographic data. I can link you to some videos explaining this workspace in more depth, but let's say you had 5 participants, I could create 5 participant profiles with all of their descriptor data that I can then link to their specific interviews. The Analyze workspace houses dozens and dozens of charts here. You'll see them broken up by element, so codes, descriptors, excerpts, and media. But you'll also see them broken up by methodology. Just note that you should play around in all of these areas. Some charts under mixed methods, for instance, are very, very useful to qualitative projects. So feel free to kind of peruse those charts. And there's also some good resources explaining what charts are at least a good starting point, depending on the type of project you have. And I can link you to that as well. Your memos workspace. So this will house every single memo that's been written in your project. And there are different options to categorize those memos, sort, filter, etc. The training workspace is for calculating inter-rater reliability using Cohen's kappa. So it's a statistical test. Really, really great tool if you want to train someone up on your code book. There are other ways to establish trustworthiness and agreeability between coders that are more in line with qualitative methods. So we have different techniques depending on what you want to see. Security, this is where you would add other folks to the project. So if I wanted to add each of you, I could just hit add user, search for your name, your Dedoose account name, and then add you to the project, and then we could collaborate in real time. The datasets workspace, this is a more advanced feature. This allows you to create subsets of data within your actual project. So for instance, if I had, let's just say my dissertation, and I only wanted to publish a specific portion of it for an article, I could just come in here and create a data set for that specific article. And then anywhere I go in the app, when I have that filter on, I would only be seeing data associated with the specific pieces of media that I chose. So a really good tool for honing in on certain subsets of your study. This is also where you can filter out other users. So for instance, if I did add you each to this project here, but I was getting kind of distracted because I can see, what coding you've done on a document that I also need to code, I could come in here and hit deactivate all, and then just select myself. And then when I go back into those documents, I would only be seeing my coding instead of yours. So that's also another great tool for establishing trustworthiness and agreeability, is to start off with deactivating other folks and then comparing your code applications when you're coding the exact same document. You can also filter out codes as well. So again, to that point, if you want to create a very specific data visualization that's only referring to a subset of your codes, or if you just want to filter out some codes that maybe you think you don't need in your code book. And then you could always return to the mini dataset tab and hit clear current set to make all of your data active again. Alrighty, then we've already gone over the projects workspace. And you also have your account workspace. I'm not going to go in there today because I don't want you to see all my account information, but this is where you can go. You can pay your bill within the app, see what type of projects you have, if you have a bunch of people linked to your account and so on. Change your password, change your email, all of that. Up top here, I just want to go over a couple. If you're collaborating in real time and you feel like you're not seeing the most up-to-date information, you can hit that reload icon and that will make sure that everything is current for you. You have our help center. So if you want to be connected to existing free learning resources, they're listed here. And you can also email support at the bottom. And then lastly, well, second to last, this is really a really nice feature where you can see how many team members are online if you are collaborating on a project, and you can instant message them. So if you do want to meet up or if you have a question about something specific in your project, you can talk to them about it in real time. One caveat though, this does reset eventually. I'm not sure, I think it's maybe 24 hours. So if you write anything of significance, make sure to copy and paste that into a memo. All right, there's also the volume button in case you have audio or video in here. And then there's also this option to pin or unpin the header. So if you're working on a laptop, for instance, or just a smaller screen and you want a larger view when you're coding, you can always unpin that header to get rid of it and just get a little more space to work with. Alrighty. Just quickly check the Q&A here. All right, I'll save that question for the end. It's more advanced. But again, feel free to throw any questions in the Q&A. All right, next I'm going to import some data and then we're going to start coding. When you want to import data, I like to use this large import data button, but you can also use the addition icon in your media workspace, whether that's the mini media workspace or if you go to the larger media workspace. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and hit import data, and then Dedoose is going to ask what type of data do you have? Again, spreadsheets, PDFs, video, audio, images, and text. Since I'm going to work with an interview today, I would hit text and then select that file from my computer. It should be pretty instantaneous depending on how large the file is. If it's ever taking longer than, I would say, a couple minutes, you may want to reach out to support because it should be pretty instantaneous, especially if they're interviews or focus groups. All right, so we're going to see some demo data that I added here. I'm going to actually go to that media workspace. If you have a large project with multiple types of data, it's nice to note that you can quickly sort and filter by the data type. So if I wanted to quickly see all videos I have in my project, you can do so with these filters to the bottom left. You can also filter by user, so who uploaded it, and a bunch of different data points. So I'm going to go into this interview. This was an interview with a marketing person from Nespresso. I'm a coffee fiend, and that's why I chose this. Okay, here we go. So you'll see the full document view here, and we can scroll. Upon import, it will keep any links, live links that you have, but it could slow it down if you don't care to have live links in the document. Just go ahead and take them out before you import. It will also say formatting related to bolding different content. So if you do want to flag something, you could always bold it, underline it, etc. Before I start coding, I want to show you some settings that some folks don't know about. So in the upper left, this is the settings panel. If I click on that, it gives us some options. Font size is one of them. So if you want to pump up the font size, you can. If you want to enable a custom color scheme for your coding, you would do that here. So you would enable it in two places when you create the code and then also in your settings panel. You can choose to view this document with line numbers. You can toggle on and off memos, or you can reorient the text. One thing to know, if you're using line numbers, it changes depending on your screen size and what font you have. So if you are trying to communicate where you are in a transcript, there's another technique to do so, and that's using the selection, the character count. So wherever you are in a transcript, it will give you the count, super tiny font on the lower left. And you can quickly jump to that by using these search and go tools on the upper right. So this brings up the option. You can search for a keyword, search for coffee. So it's telling me 39 times. And then you can cycle through and be taken to that area of the transcript, or you can also jump to a specific character position. So if I go 1288, it will take me directly there. All right, a couple more notes here. You'll see this little lock icon. If you want to change something in the transcript or edit something, if something wasn't anonymized, for example, you can make edits and then relock it. And it didn't like that. You can also export the document. So this is really, really great for, well, multiple purposes. I like to use it when I'm completely done with analysis, and I like to export it to a Word document. What this does is it gives you a Word document with your code applications and track changes, comment boxes. So really useful to have a hard copy offline. And it's useful if you just want to take a step back, get away from the computer and assess what's going on in your project, what's going on in your data. Please use this feature. It's a great one. You can also edit the media if you want to change the title, include a description, and you can also clone it. So for instance, if I went through and coded this, and for some reason I wanted a duplicate, you could hit clone, and it's going to create an exact duplicate with all of those code applications on it as well. Alrighty, as far as coding, there are 3 techniques I want to show you. I'm going to start with the longest, most cumbersome, just so you see what's going on in the system, and then end with the most efficient way to code. So it's very similar to what you would do if you were coding with, highlighters and paper. I'm just going to highlight the passage that I want to attach a code to. And then in the lower right, you'll see a red quotation mark. I'm going to select that to create an excerpt. So now we have our excerpt. The selection info box is red. This is telling us, hey, you're actively editing this. You can add codes, delete them, add memos, etc. I already created a couple codes for us here, but let's say I didn't have the code I wanted. I could always add a code from this mini codes workspace by hitting the addition icon. And then you'll be prompted to title it, add a description, and a couple different options here. So you have the option to attach a custom color if you want to color code. You also have the option to enable code weighting. So this is a more advanced feature. I'm not going to dive into it too much today, but just know that you can assign a numerical value to a code to indicate a valence in some way. So for instance, I've used this in the past interviewing people with their experiences with doctors. Some folks had really negative experiences. Some folks had really positive experiences. Instead of creating a code, it's like positive, neutral, and negative, I instead weighted that code on a scale of -1 to 1 to indicate, oh, this person had a negative experience with the doctor, this person had a positive experience, and so on. I've also seen people use it to just quantify something within their qualitative data, like hours of sleep, for instance. You can almost treat it like a Likert scale as well. And the benefits of that keeps your code book nice and concise, and also adds some really cool data visualization tools in your Analyze workspace. So I'm going to go ahead and hit submit. So now we have that code, and I'm just going to double click that code to apply it to our excerpt. You'll see the X is right by it, so you could remove it or delete the whole excerpt if you wanted to. Now I just clicked somewhere else in the transcript to get out of that excerpt, and now I'm going to highlight another passage, and this time I'm not going to bother hitting that create excerpt icon. Instead, I'm just going to double click the code that I want to apply. So a more efficient way of going about it. And again, you can double click or click and drag to add these codes to your code, to your excerpt. All right, and then lastly, we have our quick code widget. So this is really great, especially once you've established your code book and you don't want to sit here and scroll or search for the code you're looking for. So again, I'm going to highlight that passage, but this time I'm going to use the spacebar on my keyboard, and that brings up this quick code widget. So from here, I can search for a code and just double click it to apply. You can also create new codes from this area. So talking about focus. So I'm just going to type in focus groups and hit enter. And now you'll see in a second, this always happens when you're going to see the focus group code created and put in our code book, and it's also going to attach it to our excerpt. And apologies, my internet just alerted me that it's unstable. So if I go out, hopefully I'll pop right back on. But again, to use that quick code widget, just highlight and then hit the space bar on your keyboard. Super, super efficient way to code. Also great for any inductive coding. So as you're going through, you're seeing something coming from the data, you can quickly just type in that code to create a new code and apply it at the same time. Alrighty, we talked a little bit about memos, so I do want to show you how to add a memo to an excerpt. See, whenever you create an excerpt, you'll have a bar on the left. If you hover over that bar, you're going to see who created that excerpt and what codes they attached. If you want to edit it in any way, you just click on that bar, and now we have that selection info box is red again. In the corner of that box, you'll see a tiny little post-it note icon. This is where you can attach a memo. So if I click on that icon, it's going to bring up the option to link a memo. So say it's a analytical memo about visual cues. Not too creative today and don't want to waste your time. So I'm going to type that in. And then just go ahead and hit save. And now you have that memo and it's linked to this excerpt. And so you'll also see that memo icon pop up. So if anyone else, tags something with a memo and you wanted to view it, you could hover over it and you could also click on it and it's going to pull it up for you. Now you'll also notice an option to create memo groups. Memo groups are great for categorizing memos, especially if you are working with a team or you just want to separate, your notes to yourself about maybe your analytical memos versus your questions to yourself about code applications. So you can create different memo groups from this area. You're going to type it in and hit create group. And then let's say codes, create that group. It's like team communication. And then I'm going to X out of there. We go to our memos workspace. You'll see the memo that I just created and also different memo groups. So as you're going through and creating memos, you can immediately assign them to a group, or you could do so after the fact if you needed to. I'm going to switch to a different view here. And you'll see that you can select it, and then you can export that memo, add the memo to a group. And you can also create document copy. So this is a new feature to me. It's been here for a long time, but I just didn't know about it for the past year. If you create a memo that you then decide it would be really helpful to code, you can come to your memos workspace, select it, and then hit create document copy. And what this will do is it just created a copy of that memo and put it in your media workspace so that you can code it. So super handy if you do end up wanting to code one of your memos, or even if you're doing like a secondary type of analysis or project based on your memos or your process going through, you can always use that feature. All right, I'm cognizant of time, so I want to make sure to spend enough time answering your questions, and then I'll link you to some resources on data visualization where I'm actually talking through some of my dissertation research. So it's in the context of an actual study. So hopefully those charts will make more sense and connect rather than just using some demo data. All right, I'm gonna start with the question related to different data sets. So the question, if you have a larger / master project and wanted to create some smaller sub-projects using data from the master project, how would you do that? Would the sub-projects need to be developed as a separate individual project? So you have a couple different options, depending on what you're comfortable with. You can create a copy of that project if you do want it to be completely separate. If you go to your projects workspace, you're going to see an option to copy the project. This is a really great tool for numerous reasons. If you're ever going to do something in your project and you're unsure of the output, make a copy of your project so that you have it saved, and then you can, feel free to mess around and try something without being nervous about it. It's also great if you do want to create a whole new project from an existing one. So that would be one option. Another option is to use that data sets workspace. So you could create a subset of data within this workspace. You could save it. So let me quickly just make a data set here and save it for us. It's called Article 1, and you could add a description and hit submit. And so now you don't have to create that data set again. You could just come in here, go to your Article 1 data set, hit load, and now you're essentially in a whole different project, but it's still nested within your overall data. The benefit of that is if you quickly want to see and compare that subset of data with your whole data, because there's going to be this little funnel icon that allows you to quickly compare. So if I hit that, it's going to show me my full data set again. And if I hit it again, it's going to go back to that small subset. So I'd say it depends on your purpose or why you want to create different subsets. If it is in the context of the same project, I would use the data sets workspace. But if it's something where it's not completely related to that for study anymore, you can always make a copy of the project and code it separately. Yes, Kimberly. So can you please review the test function? Yes. So I'm going to go back to this data sets workspace and hit clear current set so that we have all of our items activated. So the training center, again, this is great after you've done some coding and you want to create a test and have someone take it. So you can create a code application test or a code weight test. If I wanted to test or train, let's say I have a grad student and I want to train them up on my code book and make sure we're on the same page, or that we have some key code applications that we need to talk about depending on the outcome of the test, you can create one, hit next. It's going to ask you, what codes do you want to test? Probably not going to let me actually create this test because I haven't done enough coding in this project, but let's see. And then it's going to ask, what excerpts do you want to include in this test? It automatically filtered for us based on the codes that we said we wanted to test. So if you quickly want to include excerpts that are related to those codes, you can do so. And then you hit the next button, title that test, include a description, and hit save. And you'll see this error is popping up because I do not have enough coding done in this project to actually take a valid test. So you have to have at least 2 excerpts coded with the codes I selected in order to take a test. So if I had done more coding on this project, I would hit OK, and then that would be available for other folks in the project. They could come in here, they'll see a test is available, and they could hit, well, select that test, and then an option pops up to take that test. So then they cycle through those excerpts that you created, they apply what codes that they think should be on it, and then you get a full breakdown. You get the Cohen's kappa broken down for the overall test, but also by code. And it will show you, hey, this is what the PI on the project coded, who created the test, and this is what the test taker coded. So you can do a direct comparison of where you are lining up or where you need to have more discussion about your coding. And we have great YouTube videos on that as well that goes through the process in the context of a more robust project. So I'm going to stop sharing so that I can grab those links for you. So just for some context here, I put 2 videos in the chat, but that will connect you to the overall Dedoose support YouTube, where you will find more videos related to setting up a training test, using different filters, and some more advanced features of Dedoose as well.
Cool. Thanks, Sarah. I also wanted to just ask, I don't know if you want to go back into Dedoose. I didn't know if you had enough data to show this, but one thing that we've really liked about Dedoose is the analyses you can do, but also the visuals that it produces, excuse me. And so, just going in and looking really, easily in terms of just describing the sample, like 80% women, 20% men, but also just like, this many people talked about this code and this many people talked about this code. I think Dedoose has a really nice way to display that.
Yes. So let me try to pull up a project here that has more coding in it, so I can just briefly touch on some of those.
And then as you're doing that, if I can just throw in that, a lot of the digital webinars we do here are talking about these research tools, but collaborative research tools, and that a really nice thing about Dedoose is that, Sarah and I could log in and work on the same project at the same time, and you just really need a web browser to get in there. So, not a super expensive program that I download and then have to share a massive file with you. And that's been a really nice thing for us and our team.
Yeah, it is really increased what we can do as researchers. So I am unable to log into my actual email while I'm doing presentations because of a security. I can't, I'm higher up in Dedoose, so I can't share my screen when I'm accessing those. But I just put a video in the chat where it is me going through a project and going through 7 different charts and really talking through why they're useful and what types of projects those charts would be useful for. If you have any questions, if you want to try out Dedoose, or you're wondering if it's right for a project, if you run into any problems, feel free to email me directly. Also email the general support email.
Great. Do we have any final questions before we let Sarah go? Thanks for your email. Okay, want to say thank you, Dr. Grummert. Again, thank you so much for this great presentation. Nice walkthrough. We really appreciate all the resources that you shared as well. And very cool to know that we can follow up and see some more in-depth trainings on YouTube, but then also be able to follow up with you if need be. So we really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you everyone in the chat. Again, please email me. I will answer, I promise. And I would love to see if you do try out Dedoose or if you are using it like Eric. Feel free to bring me in and we can talk through your project and different features that you may not be aware of that can help you out.
Great. I just put in a poll. I don't know if it popped up for people. I don't see it, but if you can plop in there, I think you can see it too, Sarah. How likely are you to use Dedoose in the future? And the people that are here. And then you'll also see in the chat that Karen put in a satisfaction survey. If you get a chance, please click that. In there, you can talk about your thoughts on this presentation, but we're always looking for what our digital scholars are interested in hearing about in terms of new webinars. So please, if you have any suggestions or even yourself has something you want to present, please let us know by clicking on that link there. And with that, we will conclude. Okay, thank you again so much. Really appreciate this and hope everyone has a good day, and we'll see you again in another 2 months.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.